The city buzzed with life as people scurried down the sidewalks, their faces illuminated by the glow of neon signs. It was dinner time, and the tantalizing aroma of freshly baked bread and sizzling meat wafted from nearby restaurants. Amid the bustling crowd, a small group of homeless men and women huddled together near a fast food joint. Their eyes were tired, their bodies shivering under layers of worn-out clothing. For them, the smell of food was a cruel reminder of what they didn't have. Behind the tinted windows of a sleek black car parked across the street, his tailored suit and expensive watch suggested a life of luxury, but his expression was one of quiet contemplation. As he observed the scene, his driver turned to him. "Sir, we should get going." "You have the gala at 8," the driver reminded him. The man didn't respond immediately. Instead, he continued watching the group, his gaze lingering on a little girl clutching her mother's hand. Her wide eyes scanned the restaurant window, longing etched into her face. "I have something to do first." The man in the car was Jonathan Reed, a name synonymous with success. As the CEO of a billion-dollar tech company, Jonathan had everything most people dreamed of: wealth, power, and influence. But few knew the man behind the empire. Jonathan's rise to success hadn't been easy. Born into poverty, he grew up in a cramped apartment with his single mother and younger brother. His mother worked tirelessly as a waitress, often skipping meals so her children could eat. Jonathan's earliest memories were of her exhaustion and the guilt he felt for being too young to help. Despite their struggles, she always taught him the value of kindness. She would say her words stayed with him even after her untimely passing when Jonathan was just 16. Left to care for his brother, he worked odd jobs while finishing school. Nights were spent studying under dim streetlights, driven by a determination to build a better future. His hard work paid off when he earned a scholarship to a prestigious university, setting the stage for his meteoric rise in the tech world. But success came at a cost. The demands of his career left little room for reflection, and over time, Jonathan found himself disconnected from the values his mother had instilled in him. The man's hollow eyes reminded Jonathan of his own childhood, stirring something deep within him. Since then, he had quietly made it his mission to give back, but always from the shadows. That evening, Jonathan stepped out of his car and crossed the street toward the fast food joint. The group of homeless individuals noticed him immediately, their wary eyes scanning his expensive attire. He approached the little girl and her mother, kneeling to meet the child's gaze. "Are you hungry?" he asked gently. The girl nodded hesitantly, clutching her mother's hand tighter. The mother's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded as well. Jonathan stood and addressed the group. "Wait here. I'll be right back." He entered the restaurant, his presence drawing stares from the patrons and staff. He approached the counter. "I need 50 meals, he said, pulling out his wallet. The cashier blinked in surprise. 50? Jonathan nodded. "Burgers, fries, drinks." "Make it quick." As the staff scrambled to fulfill the order, Jonathan stepped aside, pulling out his phone. He scrolled through his contacts and dialed a number. "This is Jonathan Reed. I need a delivery van and some blankets sent to my location immediately." When he returned outside with the first batch of meals, the group's initial skepticism gave way to gratitude. But just as Jonathan was handing a meal to the little girl, a man's voice cut through the moment. "What's the catch?" Jonathan turned to see an older man with a weathered face and distrustful eyes. "People like you don't do things like this for free," the man said, his tone sharp. Jonathan met his gaze calmly. "No catch, just dinner." The man's skepticism remained, but he accepted the food nonetheless. Jonathan understood. Life on the streets had a way of making people suspicious of kindness. As the night wore on, the delivery van arrived with blankets and more food. Jonathan personally handed out each item, his heart warming at the sight of the group's smiles. For the first time in a long while, he felt connected to something beyond his business empire. But then, someone in the crowd recognized him. A young man holding a meal gasped, pulling out his phone. "Wait a minute. You're Jonathan Reed? The CEO guy?" A ripple of astonishment spread through the group. Murmurs of, "Is it really him? And why is he here?" filled the air. Jonathan's instinct was to retreat, but he stopped himself. Instead, he addressed the group. "Yes, I'm Jonathan Reed," he admitted. "But tonight I'm just a man who wants to help." The older man who had questioned him earlier stepped forward. "Why would someone like you care about us?" he asked, his voice softer now. Jonathan hesitated before answering. "Because I was you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I know what it's like to go to bed hungry, to feel invisible. Someone helped me once, and I promised myself I'd do the same for others." His words hung in the air, resonating with the group. The older man nodded slowly, his skepticism melting away. "Maybe you're not like the others," he said quietly. Jonathan sat down with the group, listening to their stories. Each person's journey was unique but echoed with a shared struggle for survival. He realized that his actions tonight were only a small step. If he truly wanted to make a difference, he needed to do more. As the night deepened, a local news crew arrived, tipped off by the young man's social media post. Cameras captured Jonathan handing out meals and blankets, his suit jacket discarded. As he worked alongside the volunteers who had arrived to help, a reporter approached him. "Mr. Reed, why are you doing this?" she asked, shoving a microphone toward him. Jonathan glanced at the group of homeless individuals, now laughing and chatting as they enjoyed their food. "Because I can," he said simply. "And because I should." The story aired the next day, going viral within hours. Viewers were moved by Jonathan's humility and the sincerity of his actions. Donations poured into local shelters inspired by his example. Messages of support flooded his company's social media pages, with many people pledging to help their own communities. One particularly moving letter came from a single mother who had been homeless for years. She wrote about how Jonathan's story gave her hope, inspiring her to seek help and rebuild her life. It was a reminder to Jonathan that even small acts of kindness could create ripples of change. In the weeks that followed, Jonathan continued his efforts no longer from the shadows. He partnered with local organizations to create initiatives aimed at addressing homelessness, using his wealth and influence to make a tangible difference. The older man who had doubted him that night became one of his closest allies, helping to distribute resources and advocate for the homeless community. The two formed an unlikely but powerful partnership, working tirelessly to bring attention to the issue. The little girl Jonathan had first approached, her family was given temporary housing and the support they needed to get back on their feet. Jonathan made it a point to visit them regularly, forming a bond with the girl that reminded him of his own childhood. For Jonathan, the experience reignited the values his mother had taught him. In giving back, he found a sense of purpose that no amount of wealth could provide. He realized that his success was not measured by the size of his bank account, but by the lives he could touch. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Ecotalas. Together we can spread stories of kindness and make the world a better place. Join us in celebrating the power of compassion and the difference one person can make.